Hey folks, I'm going to be doing a freeform interpretation of the full moon in Gemini, which just occurred November 22nd, and I'm making this video a day later. So there's still plenty of time to learn about this full moon as we go on experiencing it to the next full moon. Now, the influence of the full moon typically starts maybe 2 or 3 days before the actual full moon occurs, at least astrologically speaking. And, it theoretically lasts till the next, or till the new moon. But I sort of think that the full moon is actually the chart that tends to set the note for everything that's going on. It's when things are more out in the open and so on. So I sort of look at it more like it's this chart lasts for about a month. The things I'll be saying about it last for roughly a month. And if this goes well, I'll probably do more of them in the future and stuff. I hope to do it once a month because it's fun and interesting and whatnot. Now, I currently am using Maureenus astrological software, which is a really wonderful free software for Windows. Wonderful software for just one of my least favorite operating systems, but that's okay. And I'm actually running Windows in Parallels, so I would recommend doing that if you have a Mac and you want to take advantage of all the great astrology software out there that hardly any of it is for Mac, unfortunately. So yeah, this is the chart. I set it for the area I live, so we're going to ignore, though, the houses and the ascendant and the midheaven and all that stuff. We're going to ignore those because this is more, I'm reading it more for the world, for anyone, no matter where you are, and that sort of a thing. And the way to do that is actually to start with the full, or the sign of the full moon, and read from there and take one sign per house, just like you would read a sun sign horoscope, or just like what you would read if you're using whole signs, one house per sign. So Gemini will be the first house, Cancer will be the second house, Leo the third, and so on. Okay, so pretty simple. And it really does work quite great. Okay, so what do we notice first? Well, we want to notice that obviously the moon's in Gemini. And you can probably find a whole bunch of people talking about the Sag-Gemini axis, about learning, about wisdom versus knowledge and all that sort of thing. So yes, okay, obviously just read about Gemini and Sagittarius and that stuff's emphasized. You don't need me to sit here and tell you about that stuff. It's not really how I roll anyway. At least where I am, it occurred on a Jupiter day, on a Thursday, and during the sun hour. Now again, that's going to be different depending on where you are, but if it occurred for you during a Thursday, very cool, Jupiter day. If it occurred for you during a Friday, that would be Venus day. And if it occurred for wherever you're living, possibly during a Wednesday, I'm not sure if that's possible or not. I'm not an expert on time zones, but that would be Mercury day. Well, the interesting thing about that is all three of those planets are actually pointing towards a similar thing, which I'll get into in a moment here. And the other thing we want to remember, though, before moving forward with understanding the full moon chart and the influences and whatnot that will last, between 2 weeks and 1 month, depending on how you look at it, is that, the moon is always going to be in the first house and the sun's always going to be in the seventh house. So we basically ignore that in a sense because it's not going to be significant that the sun is in the seventh house. That's really not going to be significant. What is going to be significant, though, is where these planets fall by 12th part, because they don't always fall by 12th part in the same sign that they actually occur in. Just lost my window. Okay, sorry about that. I might have to disappear for a moment while I'm doing stuff in the software, because it's I'm running Parallels, and anyway. So let me disappear for one moment. And we're going to go to Dodecatamoria, which is the 12th parts, which is basically a 12th division of the sign. And
obviously, or not obviously, depending on what you know, or what you don't know, the sun and moon in this case, because they occurred, the full moon occurred at 0, within the first degree, right, within actually the first 2.5 degrees, which is the first 12th part of a sign, they are actually in the same houses that they would be in as transits, 1st and 7. So in this particular case, we are going to emphasize their first 7 axes. And so what does that mean? Well, let's analyze the chart as we would a normal birth chart. And we'll see some pretty cool things start to come out. And I really haven't looked at this chart much at all, aside from just getting it ready for the video. So I'm interpreting it completely live as I make this video. So the ascendant lord, taking Gemini as our ascendant, is Mercury in the 7th house, along with the hour lord Jupiter in that same 7th house, and the sun also in the 7th house by 12th part, right? So already we've got a ton of 7th house significations going on. Jupiter and Mercury in the 7th house are powerful at producing relationship scenarios and whatnot, of course. Now, Jupiter actually doesn't do that well in the 7th house naturally, because Jupiter being about wisdom, it's not good if Jupiter wisdom is outside ourselves. It's not necessarily good if we're seeking it outside ourselves. So we may be coming into contact with some wizened individuals rather suddenly and unexpectedly, because Mercury's there and Mercury's retrograde, which adds to his unexpectedness, or his unexpected nature, kind of amplifies it. But we may also, this may also be suggesting that we're seeking wisdom and fulfillment and knowledge and things outside of ourselves, which is of course a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you may be delving into some great books or talking to some wizened individuals, but on the other hand, you may find that you're putting this stuff too much outside yourselves, and of course, all the wisdom teachers tell us to look within for that wisdom. Hence, both actually Jupiter and Mercury are better off in the 1st house than the 7th. And that's kind of an Indian technique based on Digbala. So we're loosely applying that here, even though it's it's kind of a stretch if for those of you who know what Digbala is. But that's okay. It'll still work in general principle. So what I find is that when Jupiter is in the 7th house, it kind of destabilizes marriages and relationships, oddly enough, because it will give a person an abundant amount of relationships sometimes, or will give them a lot of attention and association with the people they're attracted to and whatnot, but it tends to sort of be just not very stable. It produces an abundance of stuff, but it's not a very stable abundance. Although, Jupiter's in a good dignity here. He's in his own sign and bound, which gives him quite a lot of power. And even though he's combust and hidden by that sun, he's not perverted by it. He's not destroyed by it, so to speak, or whatever. But yeah, desires are going to be really high with this full moon, because the sun rules the 3rd house, and we also find the... oh no, the North Node is really in the 2nd, but it just exited that sign of Leo. So North Node's not there, but we find Sun ruling Leo, 3rd house, and that's going to be kind of like a desire for being seen, a desire for attention, because the 3rd house has to do with desires, and it's in the 7th house, which also has to do with desires. So there's quite a lot of desiring going on here. There's quite a lot of associating ourselves with other people and seeking fulfillment through other people, relationships and that sorts of thing. Perhaps putting people on a pedestal, perhaps giving power to other people to try to fulfill desires and to be, involved in satisfying urges, to be involved in entertaining pursuits and things like that. Perhaps, again, a little too much, because there's all those planets there, and Jupiter, of course, magnifies everything, and Mercury sort of gets swept away by things. So quite a lot going on with like pleasures and relationships and desires and things like that, and again, possibly seeking a lot of fulfillment and things outside of relationships.
Now, Jupiter is fallen by 12th part, so he falls in Capricorn, and he's abundantly close to Saturn, just within 2 degrees when we take his 12th part. So, unfortunately, that's kind of an inauspicious thing for Jupiter from a mundane perspective. From a more holistic perspective, it just means that probably a lot of these desires and relationship escapades are going to be frustrated in some manner, are going to be revealed as ultimately unsustainable or unfulfilling. One sec. Got to plug in my computer. So that's kind of an interesting thing that we're finding there. Another factor is that sorry, I'm thinking ahead of myself a little bit. Let me disappear for a moment. Okay. See if I can get... I think it's in speculum. Yeah. Okay, so the sun, at least in the way I've drawn up the chart, has the lowest degree. That's what I was looking for. Lower than the moon by 4 minutes, if you can believe that would be significant. But that is significant because what that symbolizes is basically, according to Gemini, the planet with the lowest degree is the significator of the spouse. And I like to use Gemini's techniques when I do these full moon charts. The planet with the highest degree, which is Venus here, is a significator of the soul. So Venus is sort of governing the more inner, profound focus, perhaps, of what this full moon signifies and so on. So that's pretty interesting. Because, again, Venus is the planet of relationships par excellence, right? Venus is the natural significator of the 7th house, of marriage, of desires, of sexuality, and so on. And, feminine empowerment and stuff like that. So Venus is very powerful in her own sign and her own bound, right? She's in that little Venus segment of Libra, the bound of Venus. And she's in the 5th house, which has to do with risk and creativity. And it's also the house of luck and the joy of Venus. So very, very joyous potentials here for creativity, for working with others, for bridging gaps, for creating community, for harmonizing with others, especially those who may have had some sort of conflict from the past. This is sort of reiterated by Mars being in Venus's bound and Venus's exaltation sign of Pisces. So we have the planet of war in dignities heavily influenced by the peacemaker, and they're actually in an Antiscia conjunction. So they're in a hidden conjunction. If you don't know about Antiscia, there's a lot you can read on the internet, and I recommend you do that because it's a very powerful technique that works very well. So we do have this, again, we have this like peacemaking theme, but once again, we have this very sexual theme too. When planets like Venus or the 7th Lord are in the 5th house, it can definitely lead to love affairs and kind of more sexual freedom, just kind of, just stuff like that, not good, not bad, just whatever it is. And, again, I wanted to come back to the sun. The sun is the planet with the lowest degree, signifying spouses and thus 7th house affairs. So, again, we really have a relationship theme coming forth powerfully in this full moon chart. And, I'm beginning to think, too, it's about opening up communication with Mercury retrograde, communication over ideologies and belief systems and the nature of the universe and the cosmos that have maybe been for some reason not on the table before in a relationship, or there's been some strife over that. Now is the time to reconsider your beliefs and your partner's beliefs and to open a dialogue with them about it instead of just sort of hiding things and trying to just sweep away perhaps any strife that sort of has emerged because of that. So that's some pretty interesting stuff to look at. Let's see what else is going on. So moon rules the 2nd house.
So naturally, finances and things to do with family, broadly speaking, are also going to be a theme, very general theme, more for some, less for others, but that's sort of a major theme here. And what's going on with that? Well, Moon is in Gemini, where it doesn't necessarily do super great because that's the 12th sign from Cancer. But obviously, every year when the moon's in Gemini for the full moon, it's not going to mean financial problems. But I think that it's interesting because the node is there, and the node moves into Gemini in the 12th part, the 12th part system, right? And Saturn's 12th part is square that node. And let's see, do we have anything else going on? Mars would be sextile, but that's not very powerful. So yeah, Saturn is squaring that node by 12th part as it moves into Gemini, the first house. So on some level, there may be some disruptions and things coming to light with finances and family that may at first appear sudden and strange or perhaps unpleasant. The word ingenious is coming to mind too, which could refer to really seeing things from a new and broader perspective that we hadn't before, with our families and with our finances and with whatever really supports us. It could be also a food thing if we've been misusing food to make up for kind of a perceived lack of nurturing and that sort of thing. Then it could be sorry, hold on. It could be go away. Okay. It could be sort of a a thing that is, I lost my train of thought, sorry. But, sorry, we could be misusing, like, food to feel safe and to feel nurtured and that sort of a thing. It could be that kind of deal. And so it is something we're going to want to pay attention to. Let me bring up the 12th parts again. So interesting theme right there, with the, sorry, I was going to talk about the south node, but I think I'll come back around to that. It's interesting that we have Saturn and the south node in the 8th house, along with Pluto. But again, Pluto would have been in that 8th house for this full moon for many years now. So I'm not going to pay it too much attention, really. And I don't see Pluto being heavily involved. Oh, well, it's widely square Venus, but no, I don't think it's close enough. Okay, so yeah, third house, third house is interesting because we already talked about it a bit, but it could also represent, like siblings and peers and neighbors and stuff, shining some kind of light on relationship themes and belief systems, like I had said before. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think there's any need to spend too much time on that. Let's see, what's the 4th house is Virgo, so home stuff, right? So that's Mercury retrograde again in the 7th. So again, this could be a time when people move in with a spouse or a partner. It could be a time where their spouse or partner has a lot of power and say over their living situation or their property, or just happiness, peace of mind, and luxury and stuff. Again, because Mercury's retrograde, it's something to kind of like go over and take a look at. Mercury's also with the third lord, Sun, which is 12th from the 4th, so it can mean moving. It can mean discovering things in your home that you had lost or didn't know was there. It can mean some kind of ending with regard to a place you were living and that kind of a thing. And that's all well and good. It's a great opportunity to re-examine your emotional foundations and that kind of a thing. When Mercury moves into Aries by 12th part, but is otherwise not really. Oh no, he is. Yeah, he's getting a wide aspect from the
from Saturn here. Mercury's at 3 Aries, getting that aspect from Saturn. So again, that could reinforce uncovering hidden things in your living situation, or kind of a sorrowful end to something that was comfortable, or wherever you lived and that sort of thing. But that offers great opportunity to reconnect with what your true foundations are, which is a very Saturnic thing in general. And I also point out that the Sun is right on top of Mercury by 12th part. See, he moves right on top of him. So that Sun influence is quite powerful, And be wary of any authority figures trying to bully you into doing things with your property. And what else does Mercury rule? Yeah, and yourself, of course, too, because Mercury rules the ascendant. So everything we're saying with regard to Sun and Mercury can also apply to the ascendant. So, be wary of being swept aside or bossed around or things like that. It's kind of a theme here. I'm not sure where else to go with that at the moment. 5th house we kind of already looked at, right? Powerful time for self-expression, risk, creativity, taking risks sexually as well, and just sort of playing with that. Sort of a beautiful scenario, especially if it's a night chart where the full moon happened for you, like it is for me in this chart, right? So that's Venus is just very, very powerful, getting that boost by being in a night chart and whatnot, being in a really auspicious house, good dignity, all that jazz. Venus moves into Leo, which is not a great sign for Venus to be in, by 12th part, but it sort of reemphasizes this like leisure, desire kind of theme that's going on, having fun, partying, and maybe doing it a little too hard so just be aware of that. But, take risks, enjoy yourself, be sensual, think of it as a bacchanalia, an opportunity to explore that side of life. But Venus is also the 12th lord, which means that, there's a certain amount of sorrow and loss that can naturally accompany these things. But there's also a high potential for, blissful self-forgetfulness. That could be intense orgasm, that could be intense drug use, and so on. I think, again, my sort of advice is to just, think before you leap, so to speak. Have fun, take risks, take advantage of the possible pleasurable scenarios that may be coming your way, but also make sure that you do it safely, right? Use a condom, have a designated driver, have a friend with you who can watch your back, who maybe is not going to be getting, drawn into the fray, so to speak, or who will offer to do that. Have an ad like Uber or Lyft or something, so you can get home safely if you are going to engage in some more leisurely activities, losing yourself in them and whatnot. And remember that, like, with the 12th house, it's only going to be sorrowful if we sort of let it be sorrowful, meaning if we get too attached to whatever it is we're doing, whatever it is we're experiencing. But it's a great way to, like, the sorrow is, again, it's only there if we get too attached emotionally. So, be aware of that too. The things that occur during this full moon are not necessarily, the pleasurable things are not necessarily going to be super wonderful all the time. They're not necessarily going to lead to like anything that's lasting. That's what I'm trying to say. And this is emphasized again by the Antiscia conjunction with Mars, which is made more powerful by Mars being the 6th lord, which is sort of a natural Martian house anyway. And so, Mars in a water sign and stuff, it's kind of like this visceral, emotional intensity that can create a lot of conflict and a lot of heartache and suffering and enmity. But again, only if we let it do that, only if we're not prepared for it mentally and emotionally. Let's see, what is Mars? Mars moves into Aries by 12th part. So very, very powerful placement of Mars for Mars as a result of that. That's really cool. Basically, this is a really powerful Mars, and I don't think it's not gonna behave too nastily or whatever. It can as things develop, we can more easily become stronger as a result because Mars is becoming stronger. So the struggles he brings can lead to a kind of strength, if that makes sense. And we already talked about Saturn is, squaring that Venus by 12th part, or Venus is squaring Saturn's 12th part, or whatever. That's great for Saturn, maybe not so great for Venus, just from a conventional point of view. Okay, so we already talked about the 7th house. It's kind of our big focus for this full moon. It has the most planets in it. Has the Carakarakas, which is the significator of spouse. Jupiter also naturally indicates marriage, especially for women. And and Mercury shows people being very directly bodily involved and drawn into that. And because Moon is in the first house by 12th part, it's also a period where first house things are going to be emphasized. So body, bodily image, and, who we are, what our natural capacities are, and who we really are. Saturn and South Node, both in the 8th house, kind of just generally speaks to me of sort of having a fear or rejection of kind of the unknown, and maybe wanting to control things a bit much, or kind of just being maybe forced to face some things that we had hoped that we wouldn't want to face, or something like that. Saturn's also the 9th lord, so we have the planet of Dharma in the house of Adharma, right? So this is kind of going against the grain, going against the tradition, maybe being disgusted with it, maybe sneaking around behind it. And I don't encourage anyone or discourage anyone to do that. I think Saturn dignified in the 8th with Ketu is sort of a tremendous opportunity to dissolve boundaries and barriers, and to get beyond outmoded moral structures of living that haven't really served you, that maybe haven't been serving you. So that's kind of cool, I think. Mars is in the 10th house, and the Lord Jupiter is in the 7th. 7th is 10th from 10th. So this creates a very powerful indication for professional matters and whatnot. And this thing really needs to go away. It's very annoying. Stop. Let's see if it went away. Hold on. Go away. I don't need you. You're blocking me. Okay, well, it may not go away. Anyway. Computer software is a butthead sometimes. Okay, well, whatever. So anyway, it's a tremendous amount of opportunity to break through walls and barriers that are obstructing your professional life, your actions, and so on. And the fact that Jupiter is with the Sun in the 7th, 10th from 10th, again, very auspicious indication for career matters, career advancement, and sort of expanding your actions and professional horizons and that sort of a thing. That's very cool. Mars is also the 11th lord, so we have a lot of gains naturally from actions, and we also have a lot of, it's generally auspicious because Venus Antiscia to Mars. Mars moves into Aries by 12th part, so there's a lot of auspiciousness, a lot of luxury and things coming as a result of actions, past, present, future. And and it's also high idealism, we're with the 11th and Venus influencing, we're talking about what we really value too, motivating our actions, perhaps getting in touch with that some more. So that's pretty cool. And then that brings us back to the 12th house. And we kind of already talked about that. One more thing I'll add is because Mars is the 11th lord and Venus is the 12th lord, there could be a theme of, unfortunately, like friends sneaking around behind your back. So that could be something to just keep an eye out for or watch out for. Basically, don't worry about it unless, and don't worry about it in general, but if you've had suspicions that a friend has been doing that, this might be a time to really delve into that. Or it may be a time when it just sort of comes forth on its own, since Mars is in that 10th public position there. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it, you know? So maybe kind of a longer video than I expected, but hopefully it's helpful, and have a great month ahead of you. Oh, and hit subscribe and like and all that good stuff. And, follow me on Facebook, check out my website, yada, yada, yada. All right, see you guys.